So we're waiting for everybody to get here and get our folders out. Here it is. We'll open with a prayer. It should be, yes. No, it is.
All right, let us pray. Most gracious Heavenly Father, we come to you today just so thankful and so glad in our hearts for, first of all, living in this great country and for having you as our Lord to help and guide us. Dear God, we want to start off today, first of all, to ask you to please remember and bless and be with all those people in our state, Southwest Georgia, that experienced the devastating tornado and winds the other day. And we ask you to be with their families, be with those who lost loved ones, be with our staff in the state that are down there helping these people. We appreciate how much they're doing, but be with them and help them feel thy presence and be with them. Dear God, we ask you to be with us now, every member of this committee, as we get together and we deliberate and study about the wonderful things we have in this state, the things we're so proud of. Help us to always make the right decisions, to do the right things that's for the best interest for the people of this great state. We ask these things in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Good morning to everyone. We had our first meeting the earlier part of the week when we adopted our rules, and we did our introductions of our different representatives on this committee. But I want to take a moment here and reintroduce our staff to you. So David Hartman, if you raise your hand, Nicole Chappelle. Nicole's the one you make sure you're on the mailing list and such as that. She's our office administrator. Jeremy Airy is lead counsel. Neleon Riviera is our intern. And Taylor Ogeron is our extern. That means we get to use them periodically to help us with some data and research. So thank y'all for being here today. And we try and start off our term with the introduction of the different agencies that benefit from the legislation we pass. We give them the first shot at some things here, just to introduce our committee. So I want to turn it over to Mark Williams, who is a commissioner of the Department of Natural Resources, and I'm going to put the center mic on for you, so go ahead.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. 7 years ago, it's hard to believe it's been that long, when I left the House and the best committee in state government as I sit here today. Most of my colleagues said you're getting your dream job and you're going to have a blast doing it. And I'm here to report to you that those that said that were exactly right. It is the greatest agency in state government. I love being the head of the agency, and I just wanted to thank them publicly today. You're going to hear today about a lot of the technical work that they do, our biologists, our law enforcement, our coastal folks, and our parks folks, and our historic folks. But this year has been sort of unique for our agency. Our agency, our employees have put down their day jobs on about 4 or 5 different occasions this year to help with the wildfires in North Georgia, to help with Hurricane Matthew recovery and relief, the winter storm that we almost had, and then but we were prepared.
That might be a timeout. You might have another opportunity.
And then also currently, as Chairman Coleman mentioned, the tornado that's down in Southwest Georgia. Never have I been prouder to lead an agency that just says put down what their day jobs and goes and helps our fellow Georgians. And we don't have to assign anybody a job, which is the great thing. These division directors send out an email and said, who wants to volunteer? And they're just flooded with volunteers. So I appreciate you letting me publicly thank my agency for that. I want to introduce a few folks that you may see running around on the in the Capitol. Helping us, Walter Rabin, most of you probably know, is our Deputy Commissioner. Wes Robinson's our Public Affairs and External Affairs. And then Shelby Johnson, who's relatively new with us, but doing a great job over here. Just some factoids for some of the new members, and then I'm going to turn it over to the division directors to go over their individual divisions. But we are made up of 5 different divisions. Our Coastal Resources division's down in Brunswick. Our Wildlife Resources division's in Social Circle. Our Law Enforcement division's also located in Social Circle. Our Parks, Recreation, and Historic Sites division is located at Panola Mountain State Park. And our Historic Preservation is also located at Panola Mountain over in Stockbridge. We manage over 1 million acres of public land. We welcome nearly 8 million visitors to our state parks each year, which generate an economic impact of more than $610 million each year. There are about 600,000 hunters in the state of Georgia, and they generate an economic impact of $1.6 billion with a B. Our anglers, 1.5 million of them, have an economic impact worth over $2 billion annually to this state. And so those are just some overall facts. I know you've got a ton of stuff on your desk, but if I could call your attention to one thing. As a former legislator, I know you get bombarded with a lot of stuff, but this is something my mama would call refrigerator worthy on the magnet. It's a little cheat sheet, and it's broken down for each one of your districts. It shows how many state parks, if you have a state park in your district, how many licensed hunters, fishermen, and everything, and I think that could be helpful to you. I really appreciate Wes, Shelby, and a lady named Amber Carter that mined all this information out and put it to each district. So we want you to look over everything in there. But as a former legislator, I thought that would be very handy for y'all to have. So at this time, Madam Chair, I'll call on Spud Woodward, and I think my division director is going to use the podium because they have PowerPoint. So, Spud.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner.
And we'll turn that mic on. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner.
ready?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Greetings from the coast, and it's still intact. It's had a rough 2016, but it's still down there. The Coastal Resource Division is one of the smaller divisions of DNR. We have about 60 employees, an annual operating budget of around $7 million, of which about $5 million of that is federal money. So obviously we're watching the proceedings in Washington with great concern these days to make sure we're going to continue to get those revenues to apply for the good of the state of Georgia. We are charged with 3 basic areas of responsibility. One is managing saltwater fishing. You heard the statistics about the economic impact of fishing overall. The saltwater fishing combined commercial and recreational generates about $500 million. Anybody who's ever on saltwater fishing knows that you don't take a cane pole and a cricket to saltwater. It takes tackle. It's a little more expensive, and so while we have about 250,000 saltwater anglers doing about 1 million trips, those trips add up to a lot of economic impact. We also were responsible for administering the Coastal Marshland Protection Act and the Shore Protection Act, 2 very visionary laws promulgated by this body back in the 70s that have largely preserved the Georgia coast as we know it now. You don't have to go very far to the north and south to see how vastly different the coastline looks along the Atlantic seaboard. We have 14 barrier islands, only 4 of them are accessible by road. Of those remaining 10, you can step on the beach of those islands and get an idea of what Oglethorpe's people saw when they came to the coast of Georgia, and that's a pretty rare thing along the Atlantic seaboard. So we administer those laws. We also administer the authority for people to build private recreational docks over tidal water bottoms that are owned by the state. We also administer the Coastal Management Program, which is federally funded, but it is sort of an omnibus program under which we do a variety of things, including technical assistance to local communities. For example, I had the privilege of being up here a few weeks ago when the Brantley County folks were up here, and the county manager personally thanked us for the work we've done helping them develop a disaster recovery and resiliency plan. And he said it really came in to its importance during Hurricane Matthew when they had the ability to look at a plan and say, this is what we need to do. So we're working with local communities to make sure that they have plans in place to deal with disasters that are inevitable, as we now have learned. So those are our 3 major focal areas. I wanted to just highlight a few things that happened during 2016. Start off with, and I'll call your attention to the screen, our ecosystem report card. As all know, being on this committee, that the amount of information that comes at you about the health of the environment is simply overwhelming. And how can you make sense out of it? And so back in 2014, we initiated an effort to develop a ecosystem report card for coastal Georgia. We put together a group of metrics that reflect the human involvement in the ecosystem and the wildlife and the environment. And we measure those metrics with a system that gives us a grade. And I'm proud to say that our grade for the second year now has been a B+. So we're in good shape.
So I'm going to interject there. Will you just take a moment and say that's amazing? And who else has done that?
Well, and I don't, Southern men don't like to brag, so I have to be very careful about this kind of stuff. And but the people that helped facilitate this from the University of Maryland said that they have done these all over the world and in numerous locations in the United States, and they've never seen report cards with that kind of score. They're usually C's, D's, that kind of thing. So
committee, let's just give a round of applause for that.
Well, and it's a testimony, as this quote says, to everybody down there, because everybody's doing it. It's the people who put a rain barrel in their yard so that they don't have to use potable water. I mean, it's all that together, and so it's a great success story, and we hope we can sustain it. Something that isn't quite so successful is this thing called blackgill that we're finding in our shrimp populations. We continue to struggle with this enigmatic critter. We really, despite the fact that we've got a pretty diverse work group of academicians and the shrimp fishermen and the resource managers, we're still trying to figure out exactly what this thing is and why it occurs like it does. The onset of blackgill was the earliest this year in record. And while not directly lethal to the shrimp, as you can see, what leads to the term blackgill is whenever this animal, which is a protozoan, colonizes the gills of the shrimp responds by melanizing the protozoan, trying to encapsulate it and get it out of its body. Well, when it does that, it impairs the ability of the gills to uptake oxygen from the surrounding water. So it isn't directly lethal, but it stresses the shrimp. We believe forces them to molt more frequently, so it's not a good thing. And we're continuing to work to try to solve this mystery. If we can figure out what it is, I'm not sure what we can do about it, but at least we're trying to figure out what it is. And then this thing called Matthew came to visit us in October. We had dodged a bullet for many years. We had, fortunately the storm wiggled a little bit to the east and saved coastal Georgia from the devastation that could have happened, but it was still not a very pleasant thing. A lot of millions of dollars of damage. We immediately after the storm, after we started facilitating recovery of docks and bulkheads and that sort of thing, and this is just an example of some of the post-storm damage. Here's a couple of shrimp boats that were displaced from their dock and went against a man's private dock, and they're still sitting there right now. We are working with FEMA, and FEMA has confirmed that they will reimburse the state of Georgia for removal of some of this debris. And so we're just going through the process, and trust me, if you've never dealt with FEMA, it's an educational experience. They've got more hoops to jump through than the circus. So, but we're jumping through them, we're jumping back through them, and we're going to keep doing it. They won't wear us out. So we had vessels dislodged. We also, it's hard to see in this slide, but you can see this is on the Wilmington River in Savannah. We had several docks that were just totally destroyed. So we set up a call center where people could self-report damage so that we could facilitate authorization to do repairs, and we had over 300 calls of self-reports of damage to various structures. And so we've been working to expedite that. The bigger problem is there's not enough people to go around to actually do the repair. So it has brought some of the folks out of the woodwork that aren't necessarily qualified, which is a whole other subject that we've talked about before. But we're continuing to work to effect recovery. Also this past fall we had a conference called basically Is Georgia Climate Ready, to deal with how do we respond and prepare to storms, sea level rise, things that we're having to deal with. It was attended by over 200 people. We had Carl Parker from the Weather Channel came and was our keynote speaker, gave a really good high altitude talk about climate and climate variability and those kind of things. And so it was well attended. There's already moves underway to have another conference. Actually, with the Chamber of Commerce has gotten involved in it, the Georgia Chamber. So we're very pleased about that. Oyster farming, we continue to work with the University of Georgia and our shellfish fishermen. Basically, oyster farming is trying to diversify the oyster fishery from harvesting wild oysters to oysters that are grown in captivity. Seed oysters are produced in the hatchery, grown in cages, and this is a farmed oyster right here, which is looks very different than the long, slender, thin-shelled wild oyster. So there's great potential here. We just got to keep nudging this on down the field till we can get across the finish line. And last but not least, during the last session, legislation approved the creation of a marine habitat license plate. This is the winning design. We are currently trying to reach the 1,000 tag pre-order threshold that we have to do to be able to put it in production. We're around 600, I think, right now. We started back in October, so we're continuing to work to try to. So if you're interested in one, let me know. We'd love to hook you up. So. And Madam Chair, that concludes my report. I'll take any questions.
Thank you very much. If I think what we might do is hold our questions to the end. I know some of my committee members have another meeting they need to attend shortly, but you're always available to us, Bud, and I really appreciate that. And still can't believe the B+ scoring. I think that's great. And what was the name of the initial seeding of the oyster in the laboratory? What is it you create? I can't remember the name of the...
Oh, the spat?
Spat, okay. I didn't want to get that one wrong. Okay, spat. I've been asked that, and that just didn't stick in my head, so thank you. Sir, go ahead.
All right. Good morning, Madam Chairman and committee. It's great to see you again. I'm the new kid on the block, Rusty Garrison. I started with Wildlife Resources Division as the director 7 months ago, and as the commissioner said, he has his dream job, I have my dream job. In fact, when I started in the wildlife field, my dad called me and said, Rusty, you've got nothing to do for vacation anymore. And he was so right. I enjoy what I do. I enjoy working with wildlife. I enjoy working with our constituents, and I enjoy working with our staff as well. So it's been a good trip so far, and people ask me, are you enjoying it? I say, yeah, I'm having fun. I may be too naive to realize that yet, but that I'm not supposed to be having fun. But I am having fun and enjoying it very much. One of the things that I've been doing is traveling around the state, just visiting our staff. The first 3 months, I made it my goal to visit with every one of our staff. And then this month, I had a statewide meeting, brought everybody together. One of the things that I've been trying to do is make sure that everybody understands our mission and knows where they fit in that mission. You can see the mission there. It's also in your handouts that you have there to conserve, to enhance, to promote wildlife resources, fisheries resources, and our outdoor heritage. That's our mission. That's what we want to focus on, and that's really what we're going to continue to focus on as a staff. And so I've tried to let everybody know what my goals, my philosophy are for the Wildlife Resources Division, and one of those is being mission-oriented, being mission-focused. I view my position as the director with Wildlife Resources Division as one to make our staff be as successful as they possibly can as they serve our customers. And I want to do everything I can in my power to make sure that they are successful. And so we're going to be mission-focused. We're going to be customer service driven in everything we do. I've told our staff when the phone rings, that's not an interruption to your work day. That is your work. And to make sure that they take care of those customers when they call. And then being communication focused, making sure we communicate well with our constituents, our customers, and also with each other. So we have 3 different sections that we work with: game management, fisheries management, and non-game. And they manage, as the commissioner's already mentioned, right at 1 million acres of property statewide. We've got 104 wildlife management areas and 68 technicians on those wildlife management areas. So they double and triple up working with those management areas. And I've given them the command, the instruction, actually at our statewide meeting. We want to be the best in the country in our management and our customer service. Everything we want to do is the best in the country. And so we're really trying to focus on that, making sure that we have the best fishing experience, the best wildlife experience, the best bird watching experience. Everything that we do, we want to strive to be the best, from the very first wildlife manager all the way up to the director. We want to be number one in everything that we're doing. We have 10 public fishing areas, more than 2,200 acres of water for people to go and fish. Our $19 wildlife management area license is the cheapest hunting and fishing lease in the state. You get access to 1 million acres of land for $19. People are paying thousands of dollars for access to 1,000 acres. And I tell them, why are you doing that? You've got just buy a $19 wildlife management area license and you're good to go. And you've got access to 1 million acres of land. We've got 151 boat ramps. We've got 7 wildlife education centers. And don't take that as a misnomer there, that's not our regional education centers. That's their focus. But everybody in our agency are educators. They're doing education. They're educating the public all the time. We've got 17 shooting ranges and 22 archery ranges around the state. And we're working on some of those this year even to upgrade those and make those top-notch shooting ranges for people to come to and feel safe when they come. Funding for our program comes from wildlife, from hunters, from anglers. That's where the funding comes from, through license sales and through excise tax on fishing gear and for hunting gear. We see a large amount of our funds coming from those areas. In fact, 71% of our funds come from license sales and the PR and DJ funds. And so hunters and anglers have put in more and do every year put in more for conservation of our wildlife than all other conservation groups put together. They're putting in more money towards conservation than all the others. We can break that down a little bit. For our non-game fund, they receive only $300,000 in state revenue. The rest of it comes from our license sales, our license plate sales, Weekend for Wildlife, state income tax checkoff, and then other donations. That's where those funds come from our non-game program. For our wildlife resources and our game management and fish management programs, 51% of our federal funds, about $37 million, 51% of our budget comes from federal funds. Then 20% of license revenue, about $15 million, comes from license revenue. And then 26% from other funds, about $20 million, and 3% comes from state budget allocations. If you look at this table here on the screen, Georgia ranks lowest in the nation for hunting and fishing license prices. We are lowest in the nation. So Georgians have access to that 1 million acres and can go and hunt and fish cheaper than anywhere else in the nation right now. They are, when you look at these, fishing is $9 it's half the southeastern average. Big game hunting is $19, less than half than the southeastern average. You can't go to a movie with your wife for $19. And so, but for that $19, you get access to that 1 million acres, and you get to go hunting, you get to go fishing, and for very little money for the whole year, whereas instead of a one-night movie. So sportsman's licenses, you can see, and the last price increase we had was in 1992. And so we have lots more information for you that's there in your packets. You've got your fact sheet. Some of you are looking at the fact sheet now. You also have the brochure that our annual report for non-game is here in your packet. And if you have any other questions, I'll be glad to entertain those after everyone else.
Thank you, and appreciate your presentation. So does a General Assembly set the price range for your licenses, or how does that work?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
So I thought that was planting a seed there, y'all. So. And we'll do questions later because several committee members have told me they have another meeting as well. So we will try and get our meeting expedited as much as possible. And if everyone will stay after, for those who can stay. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Committee,
morning.
thank you. Good morning. Appreciate the opportunity to be here and just share a little bit about our law enforcement division. I think everybody knows that our game wardens are the ones that work within our law enforcement division. One point of interest, we're the oldest state law enforcement agency in Georgia. Founded in 1911, the first game wardens were created by statute. So we kind of take that as pride that we've been around the longest of all the agencies. And you know what our core mission is? You know, we try to work to enforce all the laws that are within our purview. And that's the hunting, the fishing, the boating, the environmental, and the public safety associated with all of our DNR controlled properties. And we try to do that through a lot of education pieces. We get our officers out. I expect my officers to be a part of the communities that they live in, to garner that support, know people. I want people knowing who they are so they can deal with them direct if they have problems or issues that might be in their community. One thing that we also do that has come up over the past few years, and it's already been alluded to, but we do a lot of search and rescue associated with woods and water in this state. We started keeping our stats a few years ago, and just as an example, in 2016, we had over 500 search and rescues that our officers were involved with, you know, and that's a pretty significant number when you think about it. 334 of those were on the water, and 166 of those are on the land. Our officers also provide the state-mandated boater education courses, the hunter education courses. We participate with that, and that's just another great opportunity for our officers to interact with the public outside of that enforcement setting or a compliance check. With 1.4 million anglers, 630,000 people hunting in our state, and 332,000 registered vessels in our state, our officers stay really, really busy. And you think about the quality of our personnel within DNR, we are very, very blessed as an agency. I just want to take a second and brag that last year we brought back the 3 national awards that are available for a game warden in this nation. Corporal Jason Robinson, who works there on Lake Lanier, he's just recently been promoted, brought back the National Association of State Boating Law Administrators Boating Officer of the Year Award, a national award. Corporal Greg Wade in Southwest Georgia brought back the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies Conservation Officer Award. And then Corporal Casey Jones, who's in Murray County, brought back the North American Wildlife Enforcement Officer Association Officer of the Year. So all 3 awards that could be won, our folks brought those back. It just really speaks well about the quality of folks that we have working for us.
And we'll be honored to recognize them again this year.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. As already mentioned, you know, Georgia's a very blessed state. You go all the way from the mountains to the Piedmont to the coast. A lot of variety here, which provides a lot of territory, excuse me, for officers to cover with our state-owned properties as well as private properties that are there. And with water in our state, we're very blessed too, with 16,000 miles of river, 500,000 acres of impounded waters, 100 linear miles there on the coast, and we go up to 200 miles offshore because of a joint enforcement agreement we have with NOAA. Another thing I want to brag about with our officers was some technology that we've been working on, and we've changed the way body recovery is done in this state. You know, we work around 50 drownings a year on average. One of those things we don't want to have to do, but our officers work really, really hard trying to get closure for families who've lost a loved one. And probably starting back in 2008, we started with a side scan sonar technology that was designed for recovery operations. We've added to that a sector scan and then a little remote operated vehicle, picture on the lower right-hand side, with a camera and a side scan sonar on it also. And that over time has sort of developed. They'll use these 3 components. They'll start with the side scan, the sector scan, and then if they find a target that looks like it could potentially be a body, then they'll run the little ROV down to locate that. And with a little game warden ingenuity, they have taken a animal snare, which is used for certain types of trapping, tied a rope to it, and they'll use this little ROV, and if they can get that snare on an appendage of the individual who's drowned, they can recover that body without ever putting a diver in the water. And that has truly, truly changed the way things happen within our state with the dive teams we work with. And if they can't get it on there, then the ROV can hold on to some clothing item or something on that individual, and the diver can follow the cord straight down and recover a body. It has changed, you know, getting closure for a family a lot quicker. It just shows you the quality of folks that we have working and them working through processes to make things better in our state. You know, a Georgia Game Warden is the most versatile peace officer that there is in this state because of the water, the wood component. You know, they're full certified peace officers, but their training, unique skill set, unique equipment allows them to get involved with a lot of things. As our whole department has been involved with all these disasters the commissioner mentioned, you know, we are there supporting the public, providing for them. Just like now, we've got 57 officers that are working there in the Albany area, helping out with tornado victims, and they've done a really, really good job with that. Teamwork, we're also a part of a lot of the state groups that have been put together by executive order. A lot of things you probably wouldn't even think of, but our niche is the water and woods body recovery team, the state's child abduction response team, the governor's drug task force on marijuana eradication, and then we have a state counterterrorism task force that we have folks. That's a collateral duty. They're a game warden every day, but if they're called to fulfill this role, they'll step up and do that. And we also try to do a lot of public education, getting involved with the school systems, letting folks know a little bit about the hunting, the fishing, the boating environment, and what's associated with that. That helps our officers get into those schools, let people know who they are, and try to help foster an interest in our outdoors, whether it may be a hunting or fishing related type, just to kind of help promote that. Currently, we've got 195 officers. We've got 18 baby game wardens going through training right now, and it takes about a year to get them where you can get them where they know our culture, know how we deal with people, how we talk with people, how we interact with folks. So we're looking forward to the first of next year or end of this year getting those officers out into the field and working. We still have 47 counties without an assigned resident game warden in it. We're still working to try to fill those. Hopefully we'll continue to be able to move forward with that. And you know, nowadays with everything that's associated with public safety, it costs us with salaries, equipment, and everything else about $143,000 to get an officer up, trained, ready to go in that year's time. So it's a big investment. Our funding, we appreciate the state funding that we get. We get right at about $2.7 million of the $3 million in federal funds is from our boating fund, and that's the number of registered vessels that there are in this state, combined with our education program that helps provide the money. If it wasn't for this, we would not be able to operate because we pretty much pay for all of our gas for our vehicles, our boats, and keeping the lights on in our offices associated with that. Again, this information is in your packet. My contact information is there if it can ever be of service to you or help. And again, thank you so much for your support of our department and especially for our game wardens in the state.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And you'll be available afterwards for
Yes,
questions,
ma'am.
I think. Thank you. And then our next presenter. I know some of our committee members have another meeting, but as soon as we adjourn, we can attend those other meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's good to be with you all again. My name is Dave Crass. I am privileged to be the director of the Historic Preservation Division. We are the smallest division in DNR, 27 employees, about a $3.3 million budget. Like Spud, we're watching Washington very carefully because about half of that 3.3 comes from the National Park Service. Our mission is to promote the preservation and use of historic resources for a better Georgia, and I always emphasize that word use. We don't save old buildings and archaeological sites just because they're old. We save them because they have important roles to play in the economic, social, and scientific life of our state. I'll just touch on a few of our programs here today with you. We have a survey program with the University of Georgia where we go out and identify historic buildings across the state. We have graduate students who work for us that do that. One of our most important programs is our environmental review program. You'll be hearing a lot about this in the national news over the next year or two, I imagine. We serve as watchdogs over the federal agencies that do business in Georgia. So a good example of an environmental review project recently was the Savannah Harbor Deepening, which you're all familiar with. There was a very important Civil War shipwreck perched on the edge of the channel, and we worked with the Corps of Engineers to salvage the pieces of that wreck, send them to Texas for conservation, and once conservation is done, they'll come back to Savannah, where they'll become part of the heritage tourism industry in that city, which is a very important part of the local economy. And then we also administer the National Register of Historic Places. I'm sure many of you have heard of this. The National Register is a list of the most important historic places in the state that are worthy of preservation, and we currently have well over 80,000 properties listed on the National Register here. One of my favorite programs in the division is our federal and state tax incentive program. Currently, the feds offer an income tax credit equal to 20% of the rehabilitation expenses for an income-producing property. And a good example of a large project, in fact, the largest in the U.S. when it started, is Ponce City Market right over here on West Ponce, about a $360 million development project that our office had an integral role in. We also offer a state income tax credit equal to 25% of rehabilitation expenses. And homes, private homes are included in this. They can get a credit of up to $100,000. And then there's a $300,000 cap for income-producing properties. A couple of years ago, this body created HB 308, which instituted a larger category of project, a $5 million and $10 million credit availability. There's a $25 million cap, statewide cap on those credits that's available each year. I should make you aware that there is a House Bill 59. There was a session yesterday in the House Ways and Means Tax Subcommittee to discuss this bill, which would further tweak our state tax incentive program. And then finally, we have our preferential property tax assessment program is our third component of this particular part of our office. We work with the counties. The counties offer a freeze on the property taxes at the pre-rehabilitation level for, say, a home. And then after 8.5 years, that rises to whatever the going rate happens to be. A couple of important numbers for you associated with this particular program area. Last fiscal year, it generated well over $500 million in salaries and wages and over 12,000 direct jobs in the state. So it's a very important economic development tool, particularly in our mid-sized and smaller towns and cities. We have an archaeology shop at HPD. We work very closely with our land managing divisions, parks and wildlife resources, doing surveys ahead of facility development and that sort of thing. We also work very closely with a number of universities and our land managing divisions. For instance, we have a long-term excavation going on down at Magnolia Springs State Park of a Confederate POW camp. We work with Georgia Southern on that. It's been a very successful project, lots of news coverage. Those of you who have followed the events out at Standing Rock over the last year or so know that Native American issues can become very, very important. They get a lot of news. We work very closely with federal agencies and the federally recognized tribes coordinating to try to keep those issues solved before they get up into the press. And then we also work closely with the Georgia Council on American Indian Concerns, which are local folks here in the state. As I mentioned, we partner a lot with universities. Because archaeology is a very expensive, very labor-intensive, and very skill-intensive science. There's not a week that goes by that we don't get phone calls about cemeteries. People are always looking for information on cemeteries in Georgia. And we also co-sponsor a variety of public archaeology days. I'm proud to say that Georgia was the first state to have a African American Heritage Preservation Program. This position works with local communities to bootstrap projects that local folks are interested in. This particular little building is actually just about completed. It's the Harrington School down on St. Simon's, built in the 1920s. We work very closely with local folks and the county. It will become community gathering space, and the county owns the land around it, which will become green space. So this is a really good example of the kind of work, local work, that our office gets involved in. And then finally, one of our most popular programs is our Certified Local Government Program. This is a partnership between the National Park Service, HPD, and local jurisdictions. For a local jurisdiction to become a CLG, they pass a historic preservation ordinance that covers part of their jurisdiction, and they impanel a commission to administer that ordinance. Once they do that and become certified by the National Park Service, that gives them access to some small federal grants that we administer and enhanced technical assistance from our office. But the most important benefit of CLG status is it gives local folks an additional tool in their planning toolbox so that they can make the decisions about how their historic downtowns develop economically. I'm proud that Georgia leads the union in this. We have 95 CLGs, more than any other state. We get about 2 additional CLGs each year. And with that, I'll hush up and take any questions after Becky does her presentation.
Thank you very much. While we're waiting for the next presenter, there's a lot of literature in your folders today. It came from our Policy Academy at the Carl Vince Institute of Government. We'd asked for some additional information, and there's also a report from the Petroleum Pipeline Study Committee, and they were to inform our committee of their results. So you can either leave it in your folders or take it with you. Just wanted y'all to have it. Thank you, and please begin your presentation. Ms.
Well,
Kelly.
good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm Becky Kelly, and I'm very fortunate to be the director of the Parks, Recreation, and Historic Sites Division, a role that I've been honored to play for about 15 years now. So I want to tell you just a little bit about your Georgia State Parks. Of course, our mission is primarily twofold: to protect the natural and cultural resources that the state of Georgia owns, and to make them available to our public in ways that engages them and enriches them. But over the last few years, we've also been challenged with executing this mission in ways that lessens our dependency on the state fund. And we'll talk about a little bit about that as we go forward, about many of the great advances that we've made in that area. First of all, we represent and protect 85,000 acres of land, forest, fisheries, and wildlife through our state parks, from the mountains to the coast. We are where we must be presenting these natural resources in a way that represents the conservation ethic of our state and our department. So we work with the Wildlife Resources Division and others to make sure that we're applying best management practices to make sure that our resources are healthy. We also work with many people to make sure that our many thousands of historic sites and facilities are also healthy and can engage and communicate to people in the future as they come and visit and understand the very rich history that our state has and the significant statewide and natural resources that are a part of our state. When it comes to what most people like about state parks, well, of course, they love to hike. And we give them miles and miles, 500 or more miles of trails for them to do that. They love to go to our historic sites and learn about our culture and our history. Of course, camping is one of our #1 businesses all the way across the state. Fishing is also a very predominant focus of our resources because of our many lakes and streams and rivers. And then, of course, any kind of trail that connects people to their community and to the rest of their facility is something that we see great popularity. Because we are where people connect to nature. Predominantly where we have urban areas, it's important to have this connection, and we're very proud to be able to do it at multiple levels. We're also where we make that history of our community and our state come alive. We find ways to engage and enrich our citizens so that they want to come back and learn more about the great assets we have in Georgia. And of course, we want to encourage everyone to get out, get a little dirty, and maybe get a little fit along the way. So we've learned that we provide opportunities for people just to come out and have fun. And that is a great thing because we need happiness in our lives, and it's great when people can come out and commune with nature, their family, other members of their community, and we're really proud that our parks provide that asset for them. When they come, we want to make sure that they have great places to play, and I have to thank you for the resources that you've shared with us to allow us to improve these assets. Many of them were built decades ago. So the ability to move in and to freshen them up and encourage people to come is making a significant difference. So whether it's a cottage, a camper cabin, a campsite, a yurt, we try to find something that everyone will enjoy, their natural resources. And I got to tell you, word is out. Over 400,000 more people visited our state parks last year than they did before. We are on an upward trend. And let me just give you some numbers. And Commissioner, I want to give you a fresh number that's even better than 8.3 million people visited us last year. That generates over $643 million of economic activity in our local communities and our state, and supports over 600,000 jobs. So while we have a natural and a cultural opportunity.
6,000?
I'm sorry?
6,000?
6,000, what did I say?
600.
Well, I like your number better.
We like inflation.
Let's make sure that's in the record correctly then, please. Thank you.
Right. Or everybody's going to leave my committee and go work. So.
No, okay. But we're really excited that we have this dual opportunity to help our state, help our community, and help our natural resources. Because at the end of the day, our goal is to have healthy resources, happy customers, and we do that, provide that through dedicated employees. I think we may be the smallest in stature, but the largest of any of the divisions within DNR. We have 743 people on our team. Our budget is about $50 million. 28% of that is from state funds. The rest are what we generate through the opportunities that we present to our citizens, the opportunity to give them great places to stay, great things to do. People love it, and they're coming to your great Georgia State Parks. Thank you for the opportunity to be with you this morning.
Thank you very much. We are running into a conflict with some other meeting times today, so I think I can speak for everyone here that as the state of Georgia, we feel very fortunate to have such a well-run natural resources division in our state. And to those of you who are the leaders of our different divisions, we're very proud and honored for the work that you've done. And most of us have one of the things you've talked about in our district, so we're particularly aware of that on individual basis. I think most of my committee is going to have to leave when I adjourn, but those who can stay, please stay after, and we'll just casually ask our questions. And we meet Thursday mornings at 8 o'clock, and next week we're going to have a meeting with the Environmental Protection Division. But let's just give everybody a round of applause to show our appreciation. Thank you. Please, to our audience, know that we post on our bulletin board outside our committee room. We post on our websites. And any changes or anything, just check there. Thank you again. We stand adjourned.